Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I could go on for hours about that, and I'm not a big talker even. So the reason I got into entrepreneurship was because I was like, oh, I can make money and not have to be in one place. I've got to do that. And so that was literally like the reason. It wasn't really to make a lot of money. It wasn't to like solve a problem necessarily. It was because I was like, I can live and travel at the same time. And it's funny because growing up, like I like to go places, but in terms of international travel, I had no interest in it until like in my 20s. Like my biggest regret is I remember like in college, a bunch of my friends were studying abroad, right? Like they go away for a semester. I'm like, man, like college is a blast. Like, why would you want to go somewhere else right now? Like, this is where it's at. And I was like, people are crazy. And then my sisters both did it after me. Like, I have three little sisters, two of them studied abroad. And I didn't get it until I met Nancy, my wife. And I think it was back 2017. We went on like 3 or 4 trips in the span of like, it was like one a month for like 4 months. Like, the first one was to the Bahamas, which was when I got my first passport at like 23, 24. And we stayed on, I mean, that was nuts. We stayed on a 100-foot yacht in Atlantis. Like that, it was just kind of a dream trip. But, and so like, that's obviously like, you do that, you're going to want to do more of that, you know?
Of
So,
course.
uh, we got lucky with that. Then we went on a few other trips. And then it was just like, after that, we did an RV trip out west with my family where we went from like, Yellowstone down to the Grand Canyon and all that. And we had like 7 of us in this tiny little camper or whatever. So it was that year that really like, I was like, man, like this is all I want to do. Like I want to go see new places, do new things. And then within like, I think it was that year, the following year is when I started to get into kind of the digital marketing because I was like, I could do this anywhere and that sort of thing. And then Nancy's a nurse. And so she was like, let's do the travel nurse thing. So it's just kind of like, all right, we're doing it. And I think it was 2018. So 20, man, it's already, yeah, time's going fast, but it was 2018 and we decided we're going to do the travel nurse thing. And so our first assignment was in South Carolina. We're from the Northeast, New Jersey, Connecticut. We went to South Carolina for 3 months and we're like, man, the South like is real nice. We love it here. And then she got a contract at the Mayo Clinic out in Phoenix. And we'd never been out there, but we're like, it looks like this place is pretty nice, like in January, February, compared to a lot of other places. So we packed up everything we had and we cross country road tripped it, stopped along the way, made a trip out of it. And then we ended up out there and our plan was to stay for 3 months and we were still there 4 years later, so we just kind of fell in love with it. And, you see in different parts of the country, like we're so lucky in the US to have, it's almost like Europe in a sense, right? Like Europe is so densely packed. I don't know if you've ever been over there, but
Oh yeah.
it's like you travel just like a little bit and you're in a totally different world, right? Like everything is like sectioned kind of, and the States are like that almost in a sense where like, the Northeast and the Southwest are like two different worlds. Mm-hmm. And so as an American, like you may not have been to a lot of countries. Like everyone I know from Europe's been all over the place, right? Or like Australians travel everywhere, Canadians travel everywhere, but
it's so easy to travel. That's why, right?
Yeah.
You take one of those trains, you can go Switzerland,
yeah.
Barcelona. I mean, it's just
anywhere. Yeah. There's like 40 countries in Europe that are all like within 3 hours of each other, something like that. So, so people outside of the US, I think tend to be more well-traveled, but people inside the US, like you could travel endlessly your entire life and not see it all. You know what I mean? So anyways, I knew from an early point that I wasn't going to take any sort of opportunity or do anything that was going to limit me location wise. And so I've never taken like a physical job. Like if I ever did look for a job, it had to be remote, and even like doing the events here, I feel like, oh, like I'm kind of like getting sucked into like this area, like building up a base here. And so I'm like very conscious of that, and right now we're living half the time in New Jersey, half the time in Arizona. We don't really have like a home base.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of nuts. Like so last fall, we did our kind of late honeymoon. We traveled Europe for 2 months, backpacking it.
Saw that.
Started in Italy, went down the Balkans. It was amazing. And, to do that, we moved all of our stuff out of our apartment that we had, put it in a storage unit. And so we gave up our place, and then Nancy's kind of transitioned out of nursing. So we're all over the place right now. We're staying at the in-laws in New Jersey. I'm out here now for 3 weeks setting up this event. And so it's kind of like, it's also really, interested in the skills that travel teaches you. Like it teaches you flexibility, adaptability, right? Like you're in Europe, you get lost, you don't speak the language, whatever. Like you got to figure it out. Like your problem solving, which as an entrepreneur is probably your number one skill, gets honed, right? You do better under pressure, under stress, things that we were there for 7 weeks. And I remember things happened to us in like later on in the trip that I looked back and I said, wow, like if this had happened 3 weeks ago, like when we had just started, like it would have totally thrown us off. But now it's just another Wednesday. You know what I mean? And so it teaches you things that, and there's a big difference between travel, like true travel, and vacation, right? People in the US, they hear travel and they're like, oh, I'm going to go sit on a beach for a week in the Bahamas. And I'm like, well, technically you traveled there, but you're not really getting that like dynamic experience, right? You're not being put into any kind of problem solving situations. You're not having to meet new people. And so I think there's something to be said for traveling versus vacationing, which there's a very big difference. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be expensive. Like we went to Europe, which Europe is outside the US